All right, brother. What's up, man? It's good to see you back again. Did we do last week? We did it together. I don't know. It's like
Sean.
hit or miss these days.
Nope.
Oh, that's
Sean
right.
and I
You
was
and
last
Sean.
week. Yep.
That's right. That's why I didn't remember it.
Yeah.
Wasn't very
It was a
memorable.
great conversation.
No, I get lots of good feedback when you guys do it. So
Yeah.
more actually when you guys do it than when I do it. So I'm thinking about just bringing you guys in full time.
I'm sure it's just guys want to make sure that they're keeping you updated in regards to how it went. So they just speak up more when you're out of the pocket.
Well, and no, I didn't say I get more good feedback when you guys.
Yeah.
I said feedback.
Well, that aligns to my comment nonetheless.
Well, man, it's good to see you. I told you we'll start it off this way. I got my first real injury at jiu-jitsu.
Rib?
No, I've had some rib issues. I don't consider nothing serious. Here's the weird thing about a rib injury. Like I've had some ribs pop out right here on my chest. I legit 3 or 4 weeks ago thought I was having a heart attack. I was like, what in the world? It was like this low key heart attack. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like what?
Yeah. I'm getting sharp pain in my chest. Yeah.
Yes. And it was on my left side. And I'm like, is this a heart attack? Like, I didn't know. I'm like, I'm in pretty good shape. I'm fairly young. I'm 41. I'm like, can't be a heart attack. Like I'm sitting here contemplating whether or not it's a heart attack. It can't be.
Yeah.
It was a rib that had popped out on that side.
Yeah.
So I think that's when you're rolling with a 270-pound silverback gorilla 3 to 4 nights a week. It's bound to happen.
Belly. Yeah. You're like, oh, that
cow.
feels good right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the injury?
Well, I don't know if you can see it very well.
Oh yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So from a bicep tear,
it's a bicep tear. Yesterday, and I was talking I actually went to the ER because it was bad yesterday.
Yeah.
When it happened.
Yeah.
So I went to the ER and the doc's like, okay, here's a cut, like pull my hand, push it this way, that kind of thing. And he's like, let's do an x-ray. I'm like, I don't think a tear is going to show up on an x-ray. He's like, I know, we just want to make sure structurally bone related, nothing's out of place. Nothing's where it shouldn't be. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And he got it done. He's like, good news. That's not the problem. And he thinks it's on the muscle head itself, not any tendons or ligaments. So that's good. But bro, from here, my pec all the way down to here is just
sorry.
And man. It was
I shouldn't
deformed.
Laugh. This sucks.
No, it is funny. It was totally deformed. And I was sitting at dinner with my family last night and I'm like, check out my guns. And this one was huge. And the kids are like, whoa, that's awesome. But funny. It hurts today. And so
that sucks.
I'm out for about 3 weeks, man.
Now from an arm bar, just didn't tap.
It wasn't an arm bar actually.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I was training with Brian Littlefield. He heads up Jocko Fuels for those of you guys who don't know. And he was in side control on me. So I was on my back. And I reached down and I grabbed his foot, reached under, grabbed his foot, and I trapped this arm and I pushed him. And I thought, okay, if I push him, he's going to push back on me and I'm going to sweep him. Because I got this foot, I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to trap this arm. That's how it's going to work. That's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And so I trap everything, tighten everything, clamp everything down. And I push and he doesn't push back because he knows, right? He's a black belt. He knows. So he doesn't push back. And I just laugh. And he's like, what? I'm like, bro, you're supposed to push back when I do that. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm not going to do that, obviously. A lesser man would have pushed back on me. You would, Kip, you would have pushed back on me.
I would have pushed back. Yeah.
And then I would have swept your ass. Anyway, so we're laughing about it. And then I just tried to muscle it. That's what I did.
Yeah.
I just tried to muscle it and my arm was out here and it just went pop. And I'm like, oh, I'm done. And it hurt so bad. I got a little nauseous. And that was my first training back after a week. I've been gone for a week. It was my first training back. So now I'm out for 2 to 3 weeks. I had a friend of mine who's a chiropractor, but he does a lot of muscle neurological connection between the muscle, all that kind of stuff. He came over this morning. I'm like, hey bro, I need you to come over and look at this. And he walked through some stretches and exercises and did some of that's scraping to get some of that fascia worked out. And so, frustrating.
Sucks. Yeah. Rehab it well. I mean, one of my favorite guys to roll with, Jason South, like his left bicep is all like screwed up.
Is
like
it really?
Permanently. Yeah. Like it's a nice peak on the one side. The other one's like normal. Man. And I was like, what's wrong with your arm? He's like, well, I think I tore something and I never like fixed it. So he has like this weird
I went to the ER.
Thing.
I went to the ER. I called my buddy immediately. I'm like, I'm going to go to the orthopedist. Like, I don't want to have anything torn and not get it fixed.
Yeah.
But totally. I think it's okay. I'm going to nurse it. I'm going to nurse it for all it's worth. My wife's going to be giving me massages.
Yeah. And get a man cold while you're at it. Yeah.
Make a noodle soup and whatnot. Maybe get a little nookie here and there to make it feel better. We'll be good.
Yeah. You'll be fine. Yeah.
I told her today. Actually, I told her today. I said, hey, just so you know, can I tell you what the doctor said who came over? And she's like, yeah. And I said, he recommended having sex immediately as quickly as possible.
Yeah. To get blood flow into my bicep better.
She didn't fall for it.
Oh man. It's funny.
All right, man.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there was, years back, some guys may know about this, but someone took like, what's the WebMD? Which is like,
don't ever go on WebMD. You're dying.
I know. But back in the day, let's just assume WebMD was a valid source of medical advice. Someone took their website and duplicated it. So it looks exactly like WebMD. And then they did an entire like news article on how to reduce breast cancer. And it was like this whole survey that they performed, and they determined that performing fellatio at least like a couple times a week would reduce.
Bro, and someone wrote send me that article.
It is so hilarious. Like you're not like 100% sure. Like as you're reading, you're like, is this legit?
I need that article in my life.
I know. I immediately like, honey, you got to check this out. This is like amazing. Yeah. But just hope awesome. They don't look at the URL, because the URL is, of course, like some random thing.
Let's find that, guys. We're going to do. Hey, look, I've talked about it for a long time. We're all about providing you the resources and conversations and all this kind of stuff to help you become a better man. We are going to track that link down, and we'll get it to you guys. So stay tuned.
We'll share it to you guys. We're standing for you to become better and to improve your lives. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. All right, man. Well, let's get into the questions today. What do we got?
Yeah. So we're fielding questions today from our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/orderman. Our first question from our fellow brother, Dom Francioni. At the end of every interview.
Whoa.
Did I pronounce it wrong?
Whoa. What did you say?
Francioni?
No.
It's Italian? Oh, man.
Italian.
What is it?
Francione. I think it's actually Francione. It's not Francione. Yeah, that's Italian.
Less shh. Okay.
It's not
shh. Sorry, Dom. Dom, you know I love you, so don't take it personal, man. He's jacked too. Dom's jacked. You got to watch out for Dom. All right. At the end of every interview,
bicep if I was rolling with him.
Yeah.
He trains jiu-jitsu, by the way.
Yeah.
Killer.
And we've gotten this question before, but it's been a while. So at the end of every interview, Mr. Mickler, you used to ask, what does it mean to be a man? From all the various answers, what definition have you come up with for this question? How do you articulate the definition of what it means to be a man? John Eldridge's answer was my favorite, by the way.
I don't remember what he said, but I imagine it was powerful because he's somebody I really admire and respect. Let me back up on the conversation, the question a little bit. So a lot of you guys have actually asked me why I don't ask that question anymore. Yeah. And so I wanted to address that. I made a decision a long time ago. This is probably 3 years ago, maybe or so, that I stopped asking that question. Don't quote me on that. You guys will probably go back and check it. So maybe I'm way off, but I didn't want to ask my guests pre-scripted questions because I thought that was cheating, or it didn't do a service to my guest. It certainly didn't improve my ability to have a conversation. Because think about it like this, Kip. Let's say you want to talk to women or a coworker or a friend, Like, do you have preset questions when you go have those conversations with those people?
Yeah. Not if you're being genuine about it.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have some topics you want to hit on. You know, if I'm talking to you, Kip, might want to talk about leadership. I might want to talk about how to build a team, human resource development, that sort of thing. Like but I'm not going to have like a scripted question that I'm going to ask you if we're at dinner. Right.
And it's the same question that you asked Joe Schmo.
Everybody.
It's actually quite an insult, really, to be frank. Yeah.
I really think it is. I wouldn't say insulting, because I am genuinely interested, but I do believe I will use this word. I think it does a disservice to the person you're talking to if you're asking the same question. So there's a lot of podcasts out there who will ask like the 10 same questions. What a missed opportunity. Why would you ask Kip? Why would I ask you the same 10 questions that I asked Terry Crews, who we just released yesterday? It's like a weird thing to ask you guys the same exact question. That's lazy.
Yeah. And just as feedback, right? Like I felt like that question was a great question, even a good, consistent question, depending on the guest, right? But if you had, and he's just on my mind because I just read his latest book, John Gary Bishop, but like if you had John Gary Bishop on and you're like deep dived into like relationship psychology or whatever, and you're evolving the conversation, it's flowing, and then all of a sudden go, all right, give me your definition of what it means to be a man. He'll be like,
wait, what?
We weren't even talking about that.
We're having such a cool conversation.
So, yeah. Why would you force and now pigeonhole me into some weird thing that's unrelated to what we've been talking about?
You're exactly right. So I don't consider myself a podcaster necessarily. I do podcast, right? I'm a conversationalist. There's a distinction.
Yeah.
I'm having conversations. I love that question. But more importantly than that question is I like the answer to that question from my guest. Yeah, so what I try to do as a conversationalist is I try to draw out the answer to that question throughout the entire podcast. So when I'm having a conversation with somebody like Terry Crews, who just released, or Tim Tebow, who came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the question is, the answers are, it's there. It's an hour long plus of the answer. You just have to listen for it. Yeah. You know, when Tim Tebow starts off with, we were helping these ladies in Africa who, and this is how he started off the conversation. A husband or a boyfriend of this woman gave her enough money to poison their child, their newborn. And instead, she used that money to get where she needed to get, to put this baby in what can only be described as a baby post office box or something, like, so that somebody could get that baby anonymously and keep it alive. What does it mean to be a man? Bro, he just answered the freaking question.
Yeah.
Like, be capable of serving other people so that when you encounter these situations, you can do what's right. What if I said, hey, what does it mean to be a man? It's like, he answered the question for an hour.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, but like, in the spirit of the question, let's answer it though, right? So when I started the podcast 7 years ago, March of 2015, I started with the motto, protect, provide, preside. And if you guys are wondering where that came from, I want to be really clear. That's not my idea. It came from 2 different sources. One is from David Gilmour. He wrote a book called Man in the Making. It's that blue one right there. That's one of my favorite resources. It's that one right there. It's called Man in the Making, or you're right. Manhood. It's Manhood in the Making. That's by right. David Gilmour. It's that blue one right there. It looks like an old, you remember like Trapper Keepers and like, when you were a kid, like it had the athletes, like the black and white athletes on the front of it or whatever, like those folders. You remember those?
Yeah.
It looks
totally.
like that on the front. Manhood in the Making by David Gilmour. If you're looking for an entertaining read, don't read that book.
If you need to fall asleep, I was just joking.
Yeah, read that book. If you want to read like 10 pages and fall asleep, you're going to get a good 10 pages and then fall asleep, and it's going to take you 2 years to read it.
Yeah.
But it is really good. And he talks about the 3 P's of masculinity. So what this guy did is he went around and he interviewed and he lived with and he had conversations with tribes and cultures here currently, and then throughout history, he researched these tribes. And what he found is that these tribes and cultures, some of which have never been introduced to each other. So I'm going to blow up the idea that masculinity is a social construct right here.
Yep.
I'm not going to. David Gilmour is, and
I was going to say he makes that stance right in his book.
Yeah. So he's been studying and researching these tribes and these cultures, some of which have never been introduced to each other, and they all have striking similarities between the way in which masculinity is viewed. And that what that tells us is that masculinity is not a social construct, but a biological construct. Because if it was social, it seems strange that all of these tribes and cultures believe very similarly about masculinity when they've never been introduced to each other. So he makes the case that throughout history and throughout time that manliness or masculinity, there's a distinction. We can talk about that because I actually addressed that in my upcoming book. Little plug there, a little selfish plug there. Is that it always has a striking similarity, and that is what he says is protect. So there's when it comes to manliness, protection, provide. And the third P that he uses is not preside. It's not leadership. It's procreation. So he protect, provide, procreate. That's how somebody looks at it as a man. Now, I contend with that. I contend with a third point because I know a lot of men out there who I would consider men who, for whatever reason, are quite physically incapable of procreating.
Yeah. Or choose not to. It doesn't take away.
That's different to me. That's actually different.
You think it takes away if they're capable and they choose not to?
I do. Yeah, I do. Okay. I really do.
Just because the level of growth and opportunity to preside and the importance of providing that shows up due to procreation, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes, for sure. And I'm going to take a more spiritual / religious stance on this.
Yeah.
So you don't have to agree with me, but here's my stance. And I'm always going to share my opinion. And I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree, but God has commanded us to multiply and replenish the earth. Would you agree, Kip, with that?
I agree. Yeah.
And I think 50, 60, 70% of the people listening would agree with that. We have been commanded to multiply and replenish the earth. Now, I know there's a conflict there because what I'm doing right now is I'm appealing to authority. I'm appealing to God. And some of you guys don't believe in that authority. And okay, I don't agree. You don't agree. That's fine, whatever. But that's my belief, is that we have been commanded to multiply and replenish the earth. And so if you have the capability, you need to bring sons and daughters into this world and raise them in righteousness. That's what we as men are called to do. Now, there's situations where that can't happen physically. But I think, and I have people in my life, close friends, who have chosen not to bring children into this world. What a freaking travesty.
Well, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, because I'm probably a little too logical in my religious beliefs, right? I hear something, and instead of just going faith, God said so, or whatever, I go, well, because there's probably some logical reason, and what he wanted was, you know what I mean? I try to understand, right? And I actually think that probably one of the greatest reasons for that commandment, I shouldn't say the greatest, but one of the important aspects of that idea of procreating is the opportunity for growth that would only exist through becoming a parent. And that's how I feel is the biggest missed opportunity. Don't get me wrong, having children and them having a life is highly important and beneficial, but who I was able to become through the process of becoming a father would have been impossible otherwise. And I just don't think there's a level of growth that just will never be available to you without fatherhood.
I agree. And so here's what I would say, and I'm not saying this in any sort of mean-spiritedness. towards what you're saying at all, or
Yeah.
anybody who believes that? Because I actually believe that too, like 100%.
Yeah.
What you're saying, like there's no level of growth I could have outside of being a father. There is different types of growth, but this is something different. It's very unique
Yeah.
and it's very powerful. So I'm not disagreeing with you. But what I would say is that's a selfish motive.
Yeah. Like if you're having kids just so you can grow. Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah. Totally agree.
There's more to it. And that is that we have a responsibility. So I'm just pulling up some stuff here. I just typed in how many Christians are in the world. And you could actually make a case for other religions who believe in the same concept that aren't Christian.
Yeah.
And right here it says around the world more. This is from opendoorsusa.org. I have not vetted this site, guys. So I just pulled this off of Google. All right. It says around the world, more than 360 million Christians live in places where they experience high levels of persecution. Just for following Jesus, that's 1 in 7 believers worldwide. So it's probably more than that. Let's see what else we got here.
Well, 1 in 7, right? You're close
it's
to
more. It's got to be more than that.
Close
It's
to a
gotta be
billion,
more than
right?
that. How many Christians in the world today? This one comes from World Population Review. Again, I have not vetted this. All right.
Yeah.
We're just looking at it. And it says here that approximately 2.3 billion people practice some form of Christianity globally.
3.2 billion?
2.3 billion.
2.3.
And that means that I'm quoting here, about 1/3 of the world's population, total population is Christian. And then if you were to add Muslim and you were to add Buddhist and you were able to add some of these others, it would probably be more than, I would say, 70, 80%.
So yeah, and I have a good stat here. So Christianity 2.3, Islam 1.9, Hinduism 1.6.
So you're starting to get into 5-6 million billion, out of 8 billion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not going to profess to know what these religions teach, but I would imagine in a lot of ways they're very similar to Christianity. Okay. And then that is that there's a higher power, and what we do here matters in eternity. You know, like I imagine it's something like that. I'm not a scholar. I don't study theology. It's not what I do. I can't even get my religion straight half the time.
Yeah, you're still figuring that one out
for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But here's what I would say. What better way let's just take Christianity, for example. And I know there's a lot of people who aren't Christian, but let's just take this for example. Look, here's what I'd say. If you're listening to this podcast and you aren't Christian, you probably still believe with 95% of what Kip, you and I share on this podcast.
Yeah. You just don't call it religion. You call it just like good old,
just being a good person.
Principles to live by. Yeah.
Right. Like I'm a Nebraska, like corn-fed, like hard-ass worker. I don't believe in God, but I believe in morality and I want to do good.
Being honest,
and I want to be good.
Kill people. Yeah.
And I want to work hard. Like, okay, cool. Like we're on the same page. You can call it whatever you want. This is what I call it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just take Christianity. According to these statistics, 2.38. So we'll just call it 2.5 billion people on the planet. And let's say each of you had 4 kids. And you raised them in righteousness. And you taught them right from wrong. And you taught them about morality and hard work and doing good and serving other people and being good women and being good men. And you raised them righteously. And let's say 30% of them fell away. I think that's high. But let's say 30% of them fell away because they got wrapped up in the doctrine of popular culture.
Yeah.
That means you have 8 billion. Well, let's be fair. 6.6 billion people new on the planet in the next generation who had a mother and a father who believed in doing right, who believed in doing good, who believed that there was more to this world than what we do today, currently, or over the next 70 or 80 years, and that what we do now will create the results in our lives for eternity. There is no better way to fix culture than to be a righteous individual, to find a righteous woman, and to have a shit ton of kids together and raise them in righteousness. This is how we win the cultural war. You know what? And I'll tell you why. Because the people who don't believe like we believe don't have kids.
That's true.
They don't have kids. They hate kids. They abort kids. They kill children. And so the best way to change the culture is to be a righteous man, to marry and bond with for life and eternity, a righteous woman, and then to work together to raise 3 to 5 righteous children. And if billions of us did that, game over. Game over. Because those people aren't having kids. So that one, bro, that's going to piss a lot of people off. That one right there. I just lost half of our followers or a third of our followers right there.
And just gained a bunch more. So it's all
but
good.
Look, I'm telling you, like, I know here's one phrase that a lot of people like to say is they like to say, I don't agree with everything you say, but I agree with 90%. Well, you know what? That might have fallen outside the 10%, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to keep sharing it and I'm going to keep professing it.
What do you think is what rubs people wrong in that statement? Is the idea of procreation or the reference to Christianity and religion so much?
I think the reference to Christianity is going to rub people wrong.
Yeah.
I believe that there's going to be a lot of people that have, I said 3 to 5 is the number I use. There's probably going to be a lot of people who have 2 kids who are like, whoa, but I'm righteous. Okay. Come on now.
Yeah.
Okay. Like now you're just like, nitpicking.
Well, how about my sister that hasn't gotten married yet? And, all the exceptions to the rule. Yeah.
We're going to find the exceptions.
We're not being
and I'm
inclusive.
Not saying,
yeah.
Look, I'm not saying somebody, look, I'm not going to name names. I have close friends, very successful friends that you would recognize, friends that have been on the podcast who don't have kids. I have those people. I don't think less. I think they're great people. I'm just saying, if it were up to me, I would like command those people to have children. I'm like, you need to have like 10 freaking kids.
We just need to get them that article I was talking about earlier. Kickstart it. Yeah.
Well, Kip, I don't know if you know this, but that's not how kids are made.
That's how you get started, though. That's a good way to get
it's
started.
Fun. I ain't gonna lie, it's fun. It's a good time. You don't bring kids into the world that way, though.
Hey, I got 6. I know how to make kids. I got it down.
Okay, well, true, fair enough. But none of this disinformation, misinformation kind of stuff. On this podcast.
Yeah. Next week's episode, we're going to cover how to best make kids.
That's right. What was the freaking question? What did this guy ask?
It was Dom, and he was
holy. This is Dom. Still on Dom about why I don't talk about what does it mean to be a man.
There you go. Procreate. We got it done.
So David Gilmore says protection, provision, procreation. I disagree. I don't think procreation necessarily makes you a man because there's people who can't have kids. I get that.
Yeah.
Try to bring this back into
but
where we're going with this.
Leading through impact. And presiding is critical.
And this comes from my religion, which is Latter-day Saint, Mormon. A lot of you guys are familiar with, rather than Latter-day Saint. And if you go back and you read if you just type in Google, a family proclamation, just type family proclamation, if you're interested. And you can see that it gives a decree about the role of men and the role of women. And the role of men is very clear to protect. And they use these terms. Verbatim, protect, provide, and preside. And that's where those 3 come from.
Which I love when that came out, because I don't know what your thought was, but when they came out with that proclamation, you read it, you're like, okay, like no brainer. Why is this necessary for us to document? Why? Like it's like, who would have ever thought that like 10 years later, that thing would be maybe considered controversial. And at the time you're like, yeah, duh.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
People would put it like in a frame in their house. I'm like, you might as well just say, black and white picture. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's a no brainer, right?
Right.
Well, not anymore. It's not a brainer anymore.
Yeah. So go check that out. And I'm not trying to convert you or anything. I don't care. Doesn't bother me.
I am. It's joking.
Kip's our missionary. Were you a missionary? Were you a missionary?
No. And I'm
neither of us are missionaries.
No, and I'm probably like, maybe that's the other disclaimer. We're not proper representations. I don't think I
Yeah,
am
but I don't
anyway,
think we're
so.
saying anything that is controversial in our
No,
doctrine, or even just
no,
Christianity in general. Like, I don't
yeah,
think we're saying anything that would be questioned.
yeah. I
Anyways,
don't think so either.
just go take a look at, have a read, and
Have a read.
just read it from a secular viewpoint, even,
Totally.
just read it and ask yourself, like, if this came from, Joe Smith, your neighbor next door, would you say, oh yeah, that's pretty good, I actually like that? If it came
Yeah.
from me and you knew nothing about my religious preference, would you say, yeah, that's actually pretty good?
Totally.
Like, just read it from an objective standpoint and see if you do agree with it.
That is such a strong sign of maturity. I was actually having this conversation with my son the other day about church, right? And going to church. And it's like, man, like, if you cannot, and I would put this in any religion, it doesn't matter. If you can't go to a church, even an opposing religion, and not sit down and be edified in some way and learn and grow, you are, I don't know, I don't want to judge you too harshly, but you're just not in a mindset of maturity around spirituality and principles. Like, I can't imagine not getting edified in some way through a conversation with any religion about how to become better. Right. And yeah, I don't know. I just,
because the whole premise of religion is to be better.
Yeah. And what a great conversation, period. Whether you agree with aspects of it or not, like, man, I don't know. We should all be having that conversation.
Have you ever been to a conference or even a sermon, whatever, and that person is sharing a message and you think to yourself, holy cow, this person is talking to me?
Yeah.
Right. That's how we should go into environments, even environments that we don't like.
Totally.
And I'm not talking about church now. I'm talking about life. You go into an employee meeting and you can bitch about it. And you can have a bad attitude about it. Like, this is stupid. Or alternatively, you can go in and be like, okay, I'm going to learn like one new thing. This guy's been in the business for 30 years. He's an asshole. I don't like him, but he's been in the business for 30 years.
He's
and
been
like,
successful to some extent
from this Monday morning meeting? If you come with that attitude, you'll learn something. If you listen to this podcast, you're like, hey, Ryan and Kip, those guys are dickheads. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. They're talking about religion and they're idiots and they're morons. But you decide, like, I'm going to listen and see if there's like a tidbit of information. You're going to find it. Even with us two stooges, like, you're going to find it.
Yep.
So always go to whatever you're engaged in, because you got to be there, right? Like, if you got to go to a Monday employee meeting, like, you got to be there. So, like, be there. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and say, I don't want to be here. This sucks. I agree. Meetings suck. But just be there and learn and say, okay, well, I challenge myself to take out 1 or 2 or 5 things from this meeting that are going to improve my life. And I don't care what it is, you're always going to find it.
And I really think, like, you could even go pause for a second and finish some of those negative thoughts to a conclusion. Oh, this meeting sucks. Oh, interesting. Why does it suck? What would make this meeting more productive? What is it that causes me not to like this meeting? Like, and how should I maybe do this meeting in the future if I were in charge of this? Like, damn, don't waste your time, right? Like, evolve and take a negative thought and follow it to a conclusion so you can grow from it. Man, it's available.
That's powerful. I like that. Let's answer Dom's question real quick.
Oh yeah, Dom. Francioni.
Yeah. So read it one more time. I have an answer, but just read it one more time. I do have an answer.
What definition have you come up for that question?
Got it. Ryan. I started. The reason I got to protect, provide, preside is because I actually started with the definition. Yeah. What does it mean to be a man? It means that you have the ability, the capability, and the desire to protect, provide, and preside over yourself, your family, your loved ones, and people. This is important. People who cannot do it for themselves. So when you are walking down the street and you see somebody, getting abused or attacked, or they're in a dangerous situation, then you have a responsibility. If you're going to act like a man, you have a responsibility to take care of that person.
For sure.
That's what it is. And what I found, again, I started this movement with that. Like I started with that.
Yeah.
I led with that. And what I found is that every single person on the podcast who ever answered the question, what does it mean to be a man? Or every conversation I've had about masculinity and manliness in general, they're distinct. Masculinity and manliness, they're different. Yeah. We can talk about that if we need to. That their answer has fallen into the umbrella of protect, provide, and preside every single time. Go tomorrow. Yesterday, Terry Crews. I said something. I can't remember the exact question, but he's like, well, you know, a man's a protector and a provider. Right. Exactly. He gets it. He understands it.
Yeah.
He didn't mention the preside component of it, but he gets it. Everybody gets it. We all know what it is. It's protect, provide, preside.
I always assumed that after a couple of years of podcasts and asking that question, that there was just going to be a book called What Does It Mean to Be a Man by Ryan Michler, and that you were going to draw upon all of these interviews and inputs that people have given you, and then providing this definition as a book. I know it's not as big of a book, right? The content of that book probably wouldn't be maybe as big, but I don't know, just as a, maybe that's my wish list item for you, because I really do feel like, and by the way, that title is a strong title in the world today. What does it mean to be a man? That's pretty profound, actually.
Yeah, I like that. And thank you for giving that title to other people to be able to steal that down the road.
Yeah, right. You know what? Exit this section from the recording.
Right. No, it's good. So I'll just go ahead and release, because Barnes & Noble got wind of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And we have a book coming out the end of September. Barnes & Noble told me it's available on September 27th.
Yeah, I saw some pre-orders happening, or at least you made a post right on Insta.
Right. They told me it's available September 27th. I'm like, good to know. I wish I would have known that. It's called the Masculinity Manifesto.
Yeah. And
the subtitle is How a Man Establishes Influence, Credibility, and Authority. And we talk a lot about these topics. What does it mean to be a man? How does a man show up? How does he garner that credibility and authority with other people? Not take it. We talk about that too. We talk about dictators and tyrants and how people have tried to take those things. You can't take those things. They have to be earned. You can take other things, but those you cannot take. They have to be earned. And so if you guys want to support what we're doing, Barnes & Noble, it's available there. It's probably available on Amazon. I actually haven't looked. If you just type in Masculinity Manifesto, we're changing the book cover a little bit, but you're going to find it. And do me a solid and just get a pre-order in right now. We're going to hit New York Times. Like, my goal is to hit New York Times bestselling list. So it's crucial, man. Now more than, I can't believe I started this 7 years ago. And now even more, it's like, oh, you know what? Like, God had a plan. He's like, you need to talk about this now, because in 7 years, it's really going to be needed. And if you think it's needed now, it's going to be more and more needed in 10 years, 15, 20 years. So support. All right. Next question.
Chris Smith, the difference between primitive masculinity and being a good man, husband, father, and community leader. This community conflates the two ideas, and I struggle with connecting with most of the guys here.
There's no such thing as, what did he say? Primitive masculine. Read that again.
Performative. I'm sorry.
Performative.
Performative masculinity, which I'm not sure if I still understand.
Performative masculinity.
Yeah, but
I'll explain what I think he means.
Okay.
I think what he means is beating your chest and getting strong and having a big truck and
like performing, that you're masculine. I see. Okay.
That's not masculinity.
Okay.
It would be the equivalent of saying toxic masculinity. That isn't masculinity.
Yeah. Or that's just like also, ego.
Yeah. It would also be the same thing as saying virtuous masculinity. That's not a real thing either.
Yeah.
So this is, let's talk about the book. This is actually the topic of the book. So one lie, and I talked about this, I think it was 2 weeks ago on 4 Great Lies of Masculinity. One lie is that masculinity is toxic. It's not. It's not inherently toxic. The second lie I mentioned was that masculinity is inherently virtuous. It's actually not. It's not virtuous. It's amoral. Okay, what is masculinity? Well, it's characteristics that are generally attributed to men based on our biological makeup. Period.
And those traits could be used for good and they could be used
evil.
for bad.
Sure. Yeah. So I really wanted to unpack this because I've always been I've always hated the term toxic masculinity, but I thought, well, let's explore it. Like, is that true? And to a degree, yeah, actually, it is true.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you can use masculinity, the characteristics. Let's take violence, and there's an entire chapter on violence in this new book. And let's say that, Kip, I see you and Asia walking down the street, and I decide, you know what? I would like to hurt them. I would like to steal from them. I would like to assault them physically or even sexually. Like, and so I'm going to take a gun and I'm going to do what I need to do in order to get what I want and steal from you and your wife in some form. Okay. Is that masculine? Well, it's certainly an attribute of dominance. It's certainly an attribute of aggression and violence. And I think generally men are going to be more aggressive, more violent, more dominant than women, than our female counterparts. So yeah, I would say that's using some masculinity for unrighteous activities. Now let's flip it around. Let's say I go to assault you and your wife, and instead you're like, no, fuck no. And you pull out your gun and you shoot me in the chest 5 times. Is that violent? Of course it is.
Yeah.
Is that dominant? 100%. Is that aggressive? Absolutely. Was it righteous? You bet your ass it was. Both were masculine. One over the other determines what makes it manly. It's not manly for me to go attack you and steal from you, that which I don't have a right to. But it is manly for you to use those masculine characteristics to defend you and yours. So who was being the man? You were. Both of us may have been exhibiting masculine characteristics, but you were being the man. And that's the distinction between masculinity and manliness. We talk a lot about this.
Got it. It's great. Anything else for Chris there?
What was the question again? I get hyped up. And
I mean, he does. Yeah, I know. He does struggle. He says this community, I don't know what this community is, but
oh, that's right. Performative.
Maybe he's talking about Facebook. I don't know.
I think he's talking about the Facebook group. Here's what I would say. It's not exclusive to the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, performative masculinity is just never going to make you feel good. Like, you go buy a big ass truck. You can get jacked. Yeah. You can go, put a bunch of notches on your belt. Like, you can do all that stuff. And it'll feel good in the moment. Like, if you get off with an attractive woman, you're going to feel good. Like, of course, if you didn't feel good, then you probably wouldn't have any, desire to do it. If you go buy a big truck and pretend like you're more of a man than maybe you really are, you're going to feel good for a minute. But manliness is about harnessing those masculine characteristics. So here's a couple of chapters I talk about in the book: dominance, aggression, stoicism, violence, honesty, vigilance. If you use these types of masculine characteristics for righteous outcomes, it's going to have a long-term, long-lasting impact and effect. And it's not just going to feel good for a few seconds while you're getting off. It's going to be a lifelong experience that's going to help you be a better man and help you to serve other people more effectively.
Yeah. Well, and even though both of those show up in our communities, I mean, what an opportunity maybe for these guys that, I mean, it's almost a little bit, feels like smoke and mirrors, right? I want to be masculine. I want to be manly, but I don't want to put in the discipline and the work to be that. So I'm going to do these superficial things to come across as though I'm a man. And so what a great opportunity to help these guys get on the path and understand what does it ultimately mean to be a man. And it's much greater than, you know what I mean? These performative things that guys do because they're easy, right? They're the easy things.
Totally.
Yeah.
What I would say to the last two questions is what does it mean to be a man and there's a protect, provide, preside component of it. But what it is your ability to harness your masculine virtues and characteristics towards productive outcomes for yourself, your loved ones, and people who can't do it for themselves.
Yeah.
That's the best
Perfect.
definition I can come up with.
All right. John Rohrbaugh. Everything is paid off except the house. Should I put more money to pay off house or more money to our startup business of a homeschooling tutoring center? Tahoe Learning Labs, a little plug for himself there. I have a steady job for the utility company that I like and pays well. Thank you guys for all that you do. You are making a bigger impact on men than you know.
So this is where I think Dave Ramsey and I would probably disagree. And he's been on the podcast.
Because he's all pay off debt always, right?
Yeah. I don't think I would. I don't know what your interest rates are, but let's just talk about it broadly and generally. All your debts are paid off. You've got your mortgage. He would say double up on that or turn it into a 15-year mortgage by either. I don't think he would say refinance. I think he would just say add extra payments to it to turn it into a 15-year mortgage. I don't agree with that. Actually, what I would say is if all of your debts are paid off and your mortgage interest rate is relatively low, that you ought to give a plug for his business again. What is it?
Tahoe Learning Lab.
Is that I personally, what I would do, and actually I say this out of experience, what I am doing, like I have several mortgages on this property. I have a small mortgage on other properties. I have mortgages. I have renters in our other properties. We're paying for this extra money, discretionary money goes into the business.
Yeah. Bankroll that stuff. Yeah,
totally. Because let's just say I take $100,000 and dump it into the house here in Maine. Okay. Well, I say 4% interest compounded annually, but let's say I dumped it into the business. What am I going to get on that? 40%, 400% return on the business? Bro, I'm dumping it into the business all day long. And the other reason, there's another reason for this is that if you pour a bunch of money into your home, let's just say hypothetically you have a $300,000 mortgage and you dump over a period of several years, $100,000 extra into your mortgage. And so now you owe $200,000. I'm just using some rough numbers here. And then you fall upon hard times, or let's say there's a business opportunity. Let's say a business comes to you, and a friend who started has a little startup, little tech startup, and you're super interested in this. And you're like, man, if I put $100,000 into this thing, like this could really take off. This is a scenario that happened with me. It wasn't tech. It was another organization. I can't really disclose that right now, but if I dumped $100,000 into my home, I got to call the bank and I got to say, hey, can I get $100,000?
Can you give me some of that back? Yeah.
Yeah. And in this market, you probably could.
Yeah.
In the market of 2008 and 2009, hell no, you're not getting that money back. No way in a million years is the mortgage company going to give you your money back. And so what happens? Your buddy who's got the awesome tech startup goes out and reaches to your 10 other friends and he starts Twitter. That's going to sell to Elon Musk for, $50 billion or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And here you were, you dumped $100,000 into your house that you can't get to. Or here's another scenario. Let's say you dump $100,000 in your house and you go to jiu-jitsu and you tear your bicep and you need to go get surgery on it. And it's going to cost you $15,000 to get surgery and you don't have $15,000 in the bank. And you go to the mortgage company, you're like, hey, I think I paid you extra. Like, could you give me some of that money back? Oh, yeah, sure. We'll give you some of that money back at 8% interest. Then that $15,000 surgery turns into a $22,000 or $25,000 surgery, right?
Totally.
So you don't got to dump it into your mortgage. It's just not a prudent decision. That's where Dave Ramsey and I disagree.
Well, and there's different aspects of this. Like I was having this conversation with my mom, right? My dad just passed away. And he left my mom with a large amount of acres of land. So the question is, do I sell all these acres of land and end up paying the federal government, hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes for her to get cash right from this land? Or could she hold on to the land, lease it out, take out a loan against it and just pay herself money tax-free? Like there's strategy here. Of course, it has to come with interest rates and you know what I mean? And cash flow and other things, but it's not so simple as just, but and we've had this conversation, not to beat up Dave Ramsey, but we've had this conversation is like, would Dave probably disagree with you in the context of this conversation? Probably not. Right. But his message is consistent for the masses and for his focused audience, maybe.
One of the things, so I'm a financial advisor by trade. Like that's my background. That's what I did. I did some retail management. I did some financial planning. And then this is my third real, what I would say, business endeavor. So those are my three: retail management, financial services, and whatever you want to call this. Okay. I don't even know.
Conversationalist, not a podcast.
Conversationalist.
Just clarifying. Really a marketer.
So,
you use that term all the time.
I have no problem with that. I like marketing. I love market. I think it's awesome. And by the way, in retail, financial services, and whatever this is, it's all marketing. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys got to hear that lesson. You got to hear it. It's marketing. Okay. So I grew up hating Dave Ramsey. When I learned from my trainers and stuff about how to sell financial services, market financial services, because that's what we did.
Yeah.
That happened to be what we were selling. It was like Dave Ramsey. Oh, you can't talk about Dave Ramsey. Oh, Dave Ramsey, that guy's an idiot. That guy's a fool. And then when I sat down with Dave Ramsey, I asked him, I said, hey, look, you're talking about these baby steps of like saving $1,000 and whatever, like eating on rice and beans. Like, that's not where I made my wealth, Dave. That's not where you made your wealth. You didn't make your wealth paying down your mortgage. You made your wealth in the business.
Getting in debt. And probably getting in debt and bankrolling his business ideas with debt. Yeah.
So I was like, talk to me about that. And I wanted to hear what he said. I was very curious. And what he said, and he was very truthful. He said, yeah, Ryan, you're 100% right. Business and real estate is how you build wealth. That's how you build wealth. Business and real estate. He's like, I'm talking to 80% of people out there. And what they need to do is learn how to budget their bank account. What they need to learn how to do is not get into more consumer debt. But the other 20, yeah, you're right. They need to be buying businesses. They need to be investing in their business. They need to own real estate. That's not who I talk to. On the Dave Ramsey show, we talk to the 80% who need to go from A to B, not the guys who need to go from X to Z. So he gets it. He definitely gets it. And it was very refreshing to actually hear him say that. By the way, if you're interested, orderofman.com/Dave Ramsey, and you'll pull up the links to be able to listen to that podcast.
Excellent.
Logan, hold on 1 second. I gotta go. Yes, I gotta go pee real quick. Hold on 1 quick second.
I always hope that he never takes these out of the recordings.
Okay, then if that's the case, then it's up to you to be able to entertain the guys until I'm back.
Fair enough. You know what? I'm just checking social media.
My wife always makes fun of me for having I run Order of Man, but I have a woman's bladder. So
hey, that means you're drinking enough fluids, which is a good idea.
Trying to. Oh,
whenever I hear someone getting like gallbladder, I'm like, or not gallbladder, like a kidney stone, I'm like, find the closest water. I'm like, I better drink more of this.
Have you ever had a kidney stone?
No. And
I had one time, probably
scares
like
the shit
8
out
years
of
ago. I legit thought I was dying.
Yeah.
So I was,
I'm like,
all right. So I was soda. It was for me, it was Diet Coke, but I was working out in our backyard, like raking up leaves and whatnot. And I started to get this like stomach abdomen pain.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what's going on? We were in Southern Utah at the time. I'm like, I must've got bit by like a black widow or a brown recluse or like something. I got bit by something.
Poisoned and dying. Yeah.
Yeah. I got bit by something in my guts. Like, this is not good. And I went inside and I remember I took a shower. I'm like, I got to cool off. I was super hot. I was like, I got to cool off. And so I cooled off and I came out and I like laid on the floor, like, oh, I was dying. And my wife was gone. She was grocery shopping or something. And I called her. I'm like, hon, you need to come home like now. I've got a problem. So she comes home and I said, just honk and I'll come out. Like, we need to go to the ER immediately. So we go to the ER, all the kids load in the Suburban. I get in the Suburban. We're driving and my lips and face start going numb.
No way.
I'm like, what is going on? I'll come back to that. Remind me. But my lips and face started going numb. Remind me. I need to come back to that part. And we're driving, and my kids were like being loud and obnoxious in the car. And I vividly, no joke, I vividly remember I wanted to be so pissed and yell, but I'm like, this is actually the last time they might see me.
Yeah, you don't want to be like, shut up, I'm dying here. Thinking, wait,
I legit thought I was
kind.
dying. So I was like, hey kids, like, I'm not feeling very good. Can you keep it down? I love you guys. Like, just keep it down. I legitimately thought I was dying. So we get to the ER, and I told him what's going on. I have abdomen pain. You know, I'm warm. Like, I don't know what's going on. And they're like, oh, you have a kidney stone. And I said, no.
No, I'm dying.
No, you don't understand. I don't have a kidney stone. I'm literally dying. And they're like, sir, you have a kidney stone. Go sit down in the lobby. So I go sit in the lobby, and my wife's there, and I'm like, hon, I'm going to die. Like in this waiting room of the emergency room, I'm going to die. And I know the game. So I said, just go tell him I'm going to pass out. Like, just tell him I'm going to pass out. So she gets out, and she goes up to the window, and she says, hey, I'm going to pass. My husband's going to pass out. And like, oh, okay. They get me immediately, because I know the game. I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
They grab me immediately. They bring me in. The attending physician comes in, and he's like, so what's going on today? I said, I'm dying. Okay. Like, do something. I'm dying. And they're like, okay, well, what's the problem? I said, my stomach hurts. Here's what's going on. I'm dying. He's like, you have a kidney stone. I said, no, I don't have a kidney stone. I'm dying. He's like, okay. He rolls his eyes. He admits me. And I'm like, can you give me some medicine or like some drugs?
Or shoot me.
Like something. And he's like, sir, I can't really do that until we figure out what's going on. And he said, but I know what's going on. You have a kidney stone. I'm like, bro, if somebody else tells me that, I'm going to rage. Like, I don't have a kidney stone. He's like, okay. So I go into the MRI machine or whatever.
Yeah.
And her name's Donna. I won't say her last name, but her name's Donna. She's our neighbor. She's the X-ray tech. And I go in there. She's like, what's wrong, Ryan? She's our neighbor. She's in the church ward with us. And I said, I'm dying. And she's like, you're not dying. You have a kidney stone. And she laughed at me. I'm like, no, Donna, you don't understand. Okay. Yeah. You may have pushed a baby out of your vagina, but you've never experienced pain like I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And so she's like, okay. So she puts me in the MRI. She gets it done. I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? She's like, I can't tell you. Like, your doctor has to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I go back, and I'm sitting in the room like, hey, doc, like, you figured it out, like, put some morphine or whatever, like, mainline that shit right into my arm, because this is killing me. And he's like, well, Ryan, I have some good news and some bad news. And I'm like, okay, give it to me. I'm ready. And he's like, well, the bad news is you have a kidney stone, like we thought it was. And the good news is that it's so small that you probably already passed the thing. And so we're going to release you from the hospital.
So the good news is
you're good to go.
It's really not that bad is the good news. Yeah.
And they gave me a little bit of drugs, I think, and they released me, and I'm driving home, and I'm like, I feel pretty good. Bro, don't ever get a kidney stone. It's horrible.
I've heard horrible stuff.
Horrible.
See,
it's
I'm
horrible.
All motivated. Gallon of water today, guaranteed.
Every day.
Just by having this conversation. I'm like,
do not have a kidney stone. And I haven't had one since. My mom gets them, so I think it must be hereditary or something. But don't have a kidney stone. And don't drink a bunch of soda and Diet Coke.
Yeah.
All
okay. Right. Next question. Oh, your face was numb.
Oh, yeah. So I'm like, well, this is the venom from the spider.
Yeah.
Like, this is the Black Widow venom, like going.
Yeah.
Or the
I've read this in a book somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I was on WebMD, and that's what they said. Yeah. Like, I'm dying. It was because I was hyperventilating.
Due to
like
breathing.
I had worked myself up so much that I was hyperventilating that my lips and my lower face were going numb because I had worked my ass up because I thought I was dying.
Because
crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
all,
man.
it's all right here, guys. It's all in your
Yeah.
mind. Like everything is in your
crazy.
mind. Control this and you have control over everything else.
Yeah. All right. Logan Rowe. My child's therapist is talking about diagnosing my daughter with oppositional defiance disorder, or ODD. The backstory is I adopted my daughter at age 7. She was my niece prior and has dealt with some pretty rough dealings and trauma as a child. She is now almost 14 and I've had her for almost 7 years. My question is, do you think ODD now, or her just being extremely disrespectful and defiant? I don't expect you to know much about ODD, as I don't know much either. For other parents who have had kids in therapy, I feel like ODD can be a cop-out for kids to behave in such a way. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks for all that you do for men across the world.
What was the guy's name?
Logan.
First, I would say this, Logan, I really want to acknowledge you. This is your niece, it sounds like, who you brought on. I don't know if that's your brother or sister or your wife's brother or sister. I don't know the situation, but I just want to acknowledge you for stepping up in a situation that you don't have to. I don't know the situation, but it sounds like it's less than ideal and you stepped up, and I want to commend you for doing that. That's like one of the most important things of this story right here.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
That's really cool. I don't know a thing about, what was it?
ODD, defiance disorder, oppositional defiance disorder.
Oppositional defiance disorder. I wrote it down here. I don't know a thing about it, but so I don't know. What I do know is that ADD is diagnosed heavily in young children, especially boys. This sounds like it's his niece though, right?
Yes, his niece.
And so I think ADD has been misdiagnosed and overdiagnosed. And again, I'm not going to like speak.
By the way, statistically, it is. ADD is statistically constantly overdiagnosed. Yeah.
So when I hear that, Logan, I'm very much in alignment with you. Whatever it was called, defiance disorder. Like I hear that and I think, oh, the kid has a bad attitude or is just a little rebellious. Like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
But I hear it and I'm like, that sounds like some bullshit made up stuff to like, whatever,
let's give that a label so we can give him some meds. Yeah.
So I'm not going to say it is or it isn't, because what do I know? What I would suggest is maybe get a second opinion.
Yeah.
I would do that route first. And then I would read some books on parenting. And I would start there before medicating. Yeah. I would try to open the lines of communication. I'm not saying medication is out of the window. Like maybe, I don't know, but I'm saying start with a low hanging fruit. So when I was in the hospital at the ER yesterday, when the doc was like, hey, we're going to do an x-ray. And I said, well, I heard that x-rays aren't going to show the muscle tears and tendons and ligaments. He's like, oh no, you're exactly right. We just want to make sure we rule this out first, because that's the low hanging fruit. And then if we rule that out, then we need to go further. We need to explore further. That's what I think you need to do here is maybe clearly this child, I don't know how old this child is, but clearly
14 now.
14. And I don't know when she came into your life as far as you being more of a father figure. I don't know that. Did he say that?
7. He adopted her at age 7. Yep.
Bro, look, from the time she's newborn to 7, that's a lot of time to be damaged with other people. Okay. And so there might be some situations like that, or she might just be 14.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got a daughter. She's not 14 yet. Thankfully, yeah. By God's good grace, she's not 14, but I would try to change my parenting tactics a little bit and see what I needed to do there to keep the lines of communication open and keep her engaged. Here's a big one. Consider how much she's on social media. Consider who her friends are. Considering the distractions that she's involved with. Considering who she's spending time with. That's very important. And then I would also look at getting a second opinion before you start saying, well, okay, she's going to have to take Adderall or whatever the prescribed medication is. I would use that as a last resort, but I'm not a medical doctor and I want to throw that out there. I don't know. You're going to have to figure that out.
I think the main thing is what I hear you saying, Ryan, is just be aware of the situation, right? one, we all know that in America that we're overly on drugs more than we should be.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
We know that that most doctors are just borderline pharmacists, and they're looking for the quick answer. And so just have that knowledge going into this and going, okay, knowing that the trend is to typically just throw kids on meds. It's like, okay, well, if the doctor suggests meds, then how is this med? How do we taper off? What's the plan to get off? What's the behavior we're going for? Not, oh, just put them on meds and they're well behaved and we just continue on forever. Right? Like, you know what I mean? So look at the bigger picture, have a plan around it.
Point.
You know, and I don't know if you're in a position, you know, and understand your daughter, her willingness to share her thoughts, but like maybe even have those conversations. Like, why are you defiant? What is your thought process? What are you thinking? What is it that you don't like about, like, help her be mindful. It's really interesting. I struggle with this a lot because I feel, and we see this in just our lives, period, right? You have a difficult circumstance and we always have an opportunity to rise up and become better out of that circumstance. Or we can take some type of shortcut to minimize it and move on. And when we take a shortcut of any means, we don't grow. And so make sure that your daughter's not taking a shortcut of growth and that this is an opportunity for her to learn and grow with you. And even to your point, like you were saying, Ryan, like, well, just to share, Logan. So I have my Asia's son, Kiave, you know, when we got married, he was 3. And now that I've read Oppositional Defiance Disorder, I'm like, oh, that's totally what he has. No trauma whatsoever, right? He didn't have like extreme trauma. You would assume that age 3, he doesn't even remember life without me, right? So for all intents and purposes, you would assume that he would raise up like, oh, Kip's my dad and blah, blah, blah. No, because he knows the story. He knows that there's a dad over here. He knows that his mom and dad aren't together, that I'm not, quote unquote, his blood. You don't think he makes stories as a teenager? Of course he does. We make stories, all kinds of reasons of why we justify what we do and why our lives are shit and how people don't understand us. And we're adults. So trust me, your kid is running all kinds of stories around it's her definition or her justification of being defiant. It'd be insightful of knowing what that is and helping her have that mindset. With that said, just be prepared going into this, knowing that a lot of doctors overdiagnose. They're going to probably throw on meds quicker than you'd probably want. And the harder things and are often the correct things. And those harder things are going to be the things that no one's going to tell you. And it's going to become a better parent, push through, and it's not going to be easy. With that said, back to what Ryan said, we're not doctors, you know what I mean? All that kind of jazz. So,
I mean, that's the hard part is you got to throw that disclaimer out there because I don't know. We don't know your situation.
When every kid's different too.
And that's why you need to have that second opinion is you get another opinion. That the same thing with my arm today. I'm like the ER doc, here's what he said, the attending physician. And I'm like, okay, well, okay, I appreciate that. I'm not taking that as fact. And so I had somebody else come over this morning. I'm like, Kate, now you tell me. And he corroborated the story. I'm like, okay, all right. There's some more weight to that now. Like you guys are both saying the same thing. Got it. Check. Okay. Thank you.
Totally.
So you might, but this is what I hear. Whether this is wrong or not, this is what I hear.
Yeah.
Your kid's not doing what they're supposed to be doing because she's 14 years old. And instead of working through it, let's just get her high.
Yeah. Sedate her. Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you hear.
That's where I go immediately, right? Whenever I hear, oh, my kid has blah, blah, blah. You're like, but
so just get some other opinions, like not our opinion, get some professional opinions. And then if everybody's corroborating the story, then okay, all right, got it. There's something to this. But if somebody's like, no, she really needs to just be involved in some sports. Okay, try that first. Like that's a better route than just getting her high. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
All right, let's take one more.
Jacob Pinion. Now, this is a great one. In fact, we all need the answer to this question. So how do you lead your wife who seems perfectly content with the way that she is and has little to no desire to work on herself?
Okay.
Let's just reword this. Ryan, how do we change our wives to be better? Maybe start off the conversation with that.
No, it's actually not what it is. Here's the question. Here's the real question. How do I get my wife to grow the same way I think she should?
That's a nicer question. Yeah, but you're right. That's really what it is. How do I get her on the path that I'm on?
Why isn't she doing what I think she should be doing? What the hell's wrong with her? All right. Here's what I would say. I've been married in June will be 18 years. So for some of you, I'm a veteran. For others, I'm a newbie.
Seasoned. Yeah.
Here's what I would say. Her self-development journey is not your self-development journey. And I used to tell my wife, hey, read this book. Terry Crews just came out with this new book called Tough, how to find your masculine power. You should read this.
Yeah.
I was like,
you should read Goggins. You'd be a better
Jocko's
wife.
book. Yeah. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins would be amazing for you. Oh, Jocko. You'd really like Jocko. Leadership, the dichotomy of leadership. This would be a great book for you.
Yeah. Get some.
Come on now. Okay. You know what book was really good for?
No, I know the answer. Can I answer?
Yeah, go.
Beekeeping.
It was.
We talk a lot, so I already know the story, but go ahead.
It was like I don't even know what it's called. Beekeeping 101 or something. Who knows? I don't remember. Or it was like
Married to Dummies 101.
Yeah, that would be a good one for her. Dummies or assholes, one or the other. Or how to grow a garden from seed or whatever, or how to can green beans, or how to use a freeze dryer. Here's one she gave me the other day. And it was, she's like, here, taste this. And it was this dehydrated yellow puff ball thing. It was we have a I bought her a dehydrator. This actually ties into the story. And she's like, here, I came home the other night and she's like, here, try this and tell me what it is. So I tried it. I'm like, oh, that's a peep. She's like, nope, it's not a peep. I'm like, okay, and I said, it's a banana Laffy Taffy. And she's like, close. It's a banana saltwater taffy. I'm like, okay, well, that's the same thing. I guess good. And so she doesn't need to read David Goggins. She needs to know how to dehydrate saltwater taffies. And that's her personal development. She needs to know how to make a tomato from a seed, getting heirloom tomatoes. And she gets these thick, like this, 2-inch thick heirloom tomato, or vegetable magazines. They're not even they're catalogs. And her and my oldest son go through it together and look at these awesome tomatoes. And I'm like, I don't care about those tomatoes. Just like she doesn't care about David Goggins' book or Terry Crews, who I had on the podcast. She didn't care about that stuff. The point I'm making here is find her path. Help her find her path. Help her figure out what that is. Support, edify, uplift, enrich, work towards her path. When she's like, hey, I really want to learn how to sew. Then you go to the community center today and you pick up the community center little magazine and you find all the little sewing things on there from all the little old ladies who like to sew. And you say, hey, hon, I know you said you want to sew. I was at the community center today and this little old lady, Mrs. Johnson, she's been sewing for 80 years and she's doing a sewing class every Wednesday night for the next 6 weeks. You should totally do that. Let's get you signed up.
I just ordered a bunch of order man hats that don't have patches and maybe you can sew them.
Don't do that. You'll get to that. You'll get to that, guys. You'll turn it into something productive. But for now, don't worry about that. Just get her sewing.
Yeah.
All right. And sewing is obviously a metaphor, right? Whatever her thing is. What's Asia into, Kip?
Fitness, building our home. We're building a new house and she's just nerding out about the plans and just running with it,
So what if you got a book about, how to build a home or how to go through the process and you just bought it on Amazon and you had it shipped directly to her with a little note that says, "Hey, I love you. I'm so excited about your drive, and I'm excited to build this home together."
Yeah, totally.
Damn.
I,
Or what if,
as
or what if
Jocko
you
would
went to
say,
Home,
I would get some.
you would get some. What if you went to Home Depot and you bought a tool belt and you bought like the top of the line tools, like hammer, tape measure, like some basic things,
Getting ready to
and
build.
you're like,
yeah,
hey, hun, I know you're excited about this, and I thought this might be a cool thing to help as we get started. And so I love you. I support you, whatever you, that's not my wife's thing. Here's a good example. She loves gardening. That's a big thing for Trish. And so Brecken and I, my oldest son and I, we made a little toolbox. It's probably 18 inches long by, 6 or 7 inches wide, 7 inches deep. And we went to the local hardware store and we drilled holes on the top of it. We bought all these little tools and we built this like custom little spool on the end. And we put a thing of twine on the end with a tape measure. And then we had this like,
she carries it around,
canvas pouch that we attached to one side with screws and a washer. And we painted it this like Tiffany blue color that she really likes. And we gave it to her. I think it was either for her birthday or Mother's Day last year. Bro, she uses that she's using it today. She uses it all the time. I didn't have to tell her to read some self-help book or David Goggins or Jocko Willink or get her on my. No, I support you. This is your self-development journey. Yeah. And you can't tell me that she isn't interested in something, because I think that's the rebuttal. Well, I just don't know what she's interested in. Right. So you have to start to uncover it. You have to unpack it and figure out what she is. And then when you find a vein, then just like you would be in a mine, you're like, hey, that's a vein. Like there's some gold right there. All right, I'm going to mine that. And you mine it and you either hit the gold, or you're like, oh no, that's like a diversion. So like, here's another vein. Let's try that vein. That's what you need to do. And then when you find it, don't judge it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause when my wife's like, I'm going to go garden, I'm like, that's stupid. We just go to the grocery store. And okay, what does that tell her?
Yeah.
Okay. Like what if she said that to you every time you're like, hey, I bought this new book I'm really excited about? She's like, that's stupid. Why would you need to know how to like lift better? Okay. Well, that's deflating. And I'm not suggesting you do this, but I know there's a lot of guys who do this. It's not stupid. If she's into gardening or beekeeping or canning or playing the banjo, that's what I got my wife for Christmas. You know how many times she's played the banjo since Christmas? 2, maybe. And you know what? Here's the secret. And she's not going to listen to this. She doesn't listen to it. I don't give a shit if she plays the banjo. I don't care. It doesn't. What I care is that she knows that I listen to her and I believe in her and that I will support her.
Yep.
And so she's mentioned a banjo for years. And so I bought her, I don't know, I spent maybe $500-600 on getting her a banjo and the thing and this and that. Is it a waste of money because she's never played since Christmas? No way. Not in a million years. Because that $500 or $600 I spent on it was enough to let her know that I was thinking about her, that I care about her, that I'm listening to what she's interested in, and that I'm willing to support that. And that's why we've done pretty well over the past 18 years. Not always, there's been a gap in there, but that's what I've learned over the past 18 years.
Yeah. And this is rooted on the idea that it has to be her call. Most people's development path is based upon agency and what they've identified as important for them.
Yeah.
On their own, period. Now, we can be inspirational, and we should be. The way we show up in the world should inspire people. But guess what's not inspiring? Me trying to be inspirational to try to change you, Ryan, because you're not showing up in the world the way I think you should. That's not inspiring anybody. And so this is their path, just like your path has been your path, and it's about supporting them and letting them come to the conclusion of what's ideal for them. Yeah.
And then just not judging it and just instead supporting it. And you know what's going to happen? Just like you guys. All right. I get hopped up on certain things. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to be able to build a canoe. and I get 80% through the process. And I'm like, okay, that's not as cool as I thought it was.
I thought you dropped that thing. You didn't drop it yet?
No, it's going to be
No,
dropped this year. I
I'm
was
going to
thinking
give you
about it.
grief now. I'm like,
I couldn't
every
even
episode,
sleep.
I'm like, so how's the canoe going? Yeah.
I couldn't even sleep last night because I was thinking about everything that needed to be done. I'm like 80% done. Okay. Or
it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
It's got to be close.
It's close. It's like 80% done. Anyways, there's things that I get hopped up on that I realize I'm like, okay, that's not the thing. And cool. Like we had a good experience. Well, guess what, guys? She does the same thing. Yeah. She's like, oh, I'd love to play the banjo. And you get her one. And she's like, yeah, I hate the banjo. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's way harder than I realized. I didn't realize I had to wear that thumb thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're going to stumble over, 20 to 30% of the things that you try. And she's like, yeah, I'm all about that. And so the rest of the 70 to 80%, that was a victory because it just ruled those things out. So you can start narrowing it down. Yeah. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. So I think a call out, let's do a quick call out around pre-ordering the book again. I mean,
for sure.
You mentioned maybe check out Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Is that what you mentioned earlier?
Barnes and Noble. I know it's there for sure. 100%. It's on Barnes and Noble.
Pre-order.
We're going to pull up Amazon right now. It's called Masculinity. I wrote it so many times. You think I'd be able to spell it?
Manifesto.
Not manifest. Oh, it's on Amazon.
It is. Okay.
The book cover is not accurate. That book cover is going to change, but
and you say that because you don't like it? Is that why you bring that up?
Yeah, it's different. I don't totally like it. It's not my favorite, frankly. So I've done a lot of work on that, and I've worked with designers on that. And also the publisher didn't like it, so
helps.
But I didn't like what they came up with. So we really had to work with. It's been interesting working with a publisher. This is something different than I've done in the past. So it's been an interesting process. But yeah, it's available on Amazon. I'm looking at it right now, and it's available on Barnes and Noble, and it will be available September 27th. So pre-orders mean a lot because my goal is to hit New York Times. So the way that works, just so you guys know, is we have to sell a certain amount of copies in a very small window of time. And all of the pre-orders for the book actually apply to that period of time from the 27th, until whatever that time frame is. Pre-orders count towards that. So the more, if we can make it a New York Times bestseller in the pre-orders, let's do it.
Hold run. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to hear me talk about this for like 6 months now, but just buy the book. If you're like, man, I really like to support Ryan, what can I do? Go to Amazon, go to Barnes and Noble, go to whatever bookstore you're at or whatever, and buy a copy. On Amazon, it looks like it's $25 right now. Just spend $25. Don't even read the thing if you don't want to. I don't care. I think you should, but just buy it. That's all I care about right now.
Got it. Cool. And then I think the other just general call out is connect with the social media at Ryan Mickler on Twitter and Instagram. And of course the Facebook group in which we fielded questions today, facebook.com/group/orderman. Anything else, sir?
That's it. Let's get after it, guys. Appreciate you, Kip. Guys, good questions today. I know we only had a few, but, and we got off some tangents, but I think that was a very powerful conversation. So I hope it served you. We'll be back on Friday for your Friday field notes. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.